If you are listening to this live, happy New Year. I hope that you had a wonderful Christmas. And today we are here to kickstart 2026 with an amazing guest that I know you're all going to learn so much from. Her name is Lisa Nash, and Lisa has been a long-term client of mine for the last few years now. And she is one of the most wonderfully inspiring women in leadership I have truly ever had the pleasure to meet. But she's also super humble. She has an executive sales background, commercial background, and I think you're going to learn so much from her today. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Leadership Podcast. So, Lisa, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you, Lucy. And I hope you had a wonderful holiday as well.
Oh, I did. So, listen. Tell us a little bit about you. Start by maybe sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do, and yeah, we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm very happy to be here today. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time and finally got up the courage to do it. So I'm Lisa Nash. As you mentioned, I'm a commercial leader. My entire career has been focused in sales, specifically in the life sciences industry. And I've led many teams and been part of many teams. I reside in Detroit, Michigan, in the suburbs, and I'm just happy to be here today.
Fantastic. So, Lisa, let's rewind the clock a little bit and talk about, I think, how we first met, because it's actually quite a funny story. I know my version of how we met, but maybe do you want to share how your version?
Yeah, so I always say it was divine intervention that I met you at the perfect time that I needed to meet you. And what I mean by that is, if we rewind, at the time, it was right around the time that COVID was winding down. And I had the good fortune of working for a company that was really busy during COVID and essential. What that meant, though, is that I was working 80-hour weeks, sitting in my chair most of the day, and doing something really important, which was supporting the teams that were trying to get the vaccine out. And so I didn't think much about what effect that would have had on me physically, because, it was what was needed at the time. And what ended up happening, though, is I was completely burned out. And at the time, I didn't know what burnout meant. I just knew that something was wrong. And it was the first time that I realized that stress has a profound impact on you physically. I was actually to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed. I was in so much pain. And so I made the decision after the company went up for sale that I was not going to stay on, and I left, and then was faced with the now what. So addressing the physical parts of what I was dealing with was the easy part. I got, a trainer. I went to mobility therapy, and I worked really hard to get my strength back. But what was missing was the other part, the emotional, the mental, the part that I needed to work on to get ready for the next role. And I realized I was not ready at all. And at that time, not knowing what to do, I started seeing your posts on LinkedIn and started listening to the podcast. And it really resonated with me that you were the person that needed to help me get to that next point. And so we started our one-on-one coaching with tears. I think every time you asked me a question, I think I broke down in tears before I answered. But it was hugely beneficial for me to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do and why I was the way I was, and be able to really own my power. And it was a game changer at that point.
Wow. And I remember, if I think back to, I remember we met actually, it was over at Harvard. I think it was a Harvard Business Review article about male leaders and their dominance. And Lisa and I met in the comments section, which is so crazy. and then end up having these discussions about, being a female leader in a male dominated world is really, really challenging. And that's, I guess, still the case today. And, just going back to what you were saying around being burned out and feeling like you needed to work on yourself and your own confidence, I guess, like, tell us a little bit about what your career has been like working primarily, because you're like at an executive level, you're there. How has that been in this male dominated world of STEM in particular that we live in?
Yeah, it's hard. And even at this point, after 30 years, it's really hard. And not because anybody, is ill will or comes at this, from a mean or a hurtful way. I've really kind of learned how the biases have happened. And a lot of this is around confidence and how I was showing up in the room. And I made some big mistakes along the way because I felt like I needed to act a certain way or be a certain way or do this or not do that, instead of really embracing my authenticity and who I was and being okay with it. And that was the biggest thing. It is nerve-wracking to walk into a conference room and, there are 14 men and you're the only female, and be able to have authority. And I know what I'm doing. I'm great at my job. And having that confidence walking into that room is a whole different story, though.
Mm. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I have seen you blossom from, not truly showing up as your authentic self, wanting to, but not even really knowing what that meant. And, having certain fears like we all do in these male dominated spaces, to now I really see you owning your power. You are in full alignment with your authority, your power, you're authentic. And I see you in 360 as well, how you're able to spread that knowledge as with the other women. It's just such a gift. But what has the shift been to help you to get from where you were to, I think you said to me before, I embrace who I am now, warts and all. Like, how did you get there?
Yeah. So after we did the one-on-one coaching, which again made all the difference, right? Because that time I spent working on knowing me. And so some of the tools that we used, the value, the value assessment, and going through and understanding, okay, what's really important to me. And I'll never forget, as I was wrestling with this, and should I have said that? Should I have reacted that way? Why do I get so worked up? I mean, I was in a fight or flight state constantly. There was never shut off. And the doubt and the negativity and the voices inside my head saying, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? But once we tackled what really mattered to me and what my values were, and then also did the skills assessments, to say, hey, I'm really good at this. And then also to say, I'm not really good at this, but that's okay, because you can't be good at everything, instead of having to try to be perfect and getting things perfect. So once I knew where I was, that was the time that I decided to join 360 and the community. And I don't know if you remember, I always was very worried about sharing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to keep things confidential and I didn't want to speak up. And part of that was because I always felt that I had to be guarded about what I said or how I acted or what I did. And the joining 360 really helped give me that confidence and that security, almost, that I'm in a group with other women who understand the challenges I'm facing every day. And then my focus turned to authentic leadership. And how could I show up every day as my best version of myself, for my company, for my team, and for myself, and it be in alignment. And then I took a new role and with a great company, and a great opportunity, but I knew I needed to have that support for that to be a success.
Mm. I think it's so interesting what you said there. You've said, I hear this a lot as well around women afraid, being afraid or fearful about really being vulnerable. And I totally get that. I would have been exactly the same because you don't have anything. If I look at what we've created in 360, and for myself, I'm in other business groups as well. I never had a psychologically safe space before in a group, in a work setting, because you can't really show up and speak really vulnerably with your colleagues at work because they're also technically your peers, right? Or your boss or your HR or whatever. And so I'm wondering, like, even hearing you today share that, firstly, thank you for sharing that so openly, because I think there's a lot of people who think that they need one-to-one coaching when really in some cases group situations are better. I always say, if you need to do deep work, like what I would have done with Lisa, or you're at a stage where you're like, totally need to tackle something that's one-to-one, that is, not meant for a group. But if you want to, like, what would you say is the difference, Lisa, between what you get from the group that you didn't get, say, from the one-to-one?
Yeah, so a couple things. First, the perspective of other really amazing women, right, that are at various levels with various backgrounds, but there's a common theme that when I hear and see the posts that we're all trying to be the best we can be at our position, right? And that position is work, home, as a friend, as a neighbor, right? It for especially for women, work is one piece of a much more broader experience. And so being part of that, and then the second thing is the tools. I've gotten so many great tools from being in the community and hearing how other people are using them. And I find myself, whenever I have a situation that I'm dealing with, saying, okay, wait, there's probably a tool for this. And now we have the Chat GPT that's available within the community that you've set up, so that I can say, I need to, do a performance review, and the conversation's going to be difficult. Do you have anything that can help with that? And then it will point me to the toolbox, and you can use these, templates. Try these things, whether it's having difficult conversations or the calmer method, right? And how to have a conversation and be productive. So the tools have been fabulous, and I'm really excited every time a new tool drops or we have a new training, because it's something else I can use.
Yeah, I love that about Lisa. Lisa loves, I think you love a good tool. I'm exactly the same. I think sometimes when you try to figure everything out in your head without a framework or without a strategy, that's why we spiral. That's why we ask 20 different people for advice. Whereas when you have a framework or a process to follow, it helps you guide you to your best solution. So it's not like this is how you have a performance discussion. It's more like, okay, this is how you need to show up in the discussion, as opposed to these are the words to say. And I always find that with conflict management training is that, so I've done trainings before where it's like telling you, you need to lean into discomfort and you need to give feedback, but you need to be in the right state before you can even do that, right? So that's one thing that I really pride myself on, is trying to create tools that address the psychology first and then give the strategy. So I'm glad to hear that you like the
Yes.
tools.
Yes. Yeah.
So go back to then, obviously, when you joined 360, you had just moved into a new role, and we had, you'd done the one-to-one and we'd taken a break for a while, and then you'd come back, which I always love, want to see familiar faces back again. Why did you think you needed the support then when you moved roles? What was it?
So it was really the tools to hone in my leadership skills and to make sure that I didn't slip back into old tendencies, because I was going into a role that was a new role, and there was a lot of responsibility at a senior level, and also a culture, very male dominated, 50-year-old culture. And so for the organization, having not only a new person come in, a new person that is working to bring the company into a new market, which was life sciences, and it's a woman, there were a lot of variables that, again, subconsciously, these biases exist. And so I had to be strong enough and confident enough in myself. But I also wanted to make sure that I developed a team and a culture that was cohesive and that helped each other and looked out for each other rather than coming in with a sledgehammer, because as you know, that never works. And I wanted to be set up for success. But being able to put that group around me of women that would understand where I was at and the environment I was in, it's hard to find. And
Mm.
that's what's so special about this group, is that they're in similar roles in similar companies or adjacent companies. And so I can speak freely, I can learn freely, and really make the most out of it.
Mm. And how did you get over that fear, Lisa, of, when you came to a group coaching session for the first time, feeling a little guarded? Like, how did you get over the fear to actually do it? Because the fear is real if you're not used to it.
Yeah, other than, long walks with my husband and downloads every night, that was the release. That wasn't the solution. So,
Mm.
although I enjoyed it and was very grateful for that, I always knew that I needed to then take action. And the only way I was going to take action was to be able to admit and to formally say it out loud that these were the things I was struggling with. And
Mm.
that was the vulnerability. And once I got over that, then now I'm happy to share and speak freely, because the growth that comes from that is so huge. And there's no reason to be guarded, because I think, especially in our group, and I'd like to think in general, people want to help people. And so if you don't put yourself out there, you don't give yourself the opportunity to have that connection and make that growth happen.
Mm. And I always think vulnerability is our biggest strength. It's something that if you think about a movie, we connect more with the vulnerable, struggling character than we do with the superhero in the movie, because we all connect as humans through vulnerability. And I'm wondering, like, why do you think that as women, we find it so difficult to be vulnerable?
Well, I think if you took a poll across all women, they would tell you that people pleasing is probably one of their biggest um, attributes or downfalls, right?
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I have a son who's in his 20s, and when I'm around his friends that are females that are starting in the workforce and are his age, I've noticed that they have that same tendency already, right? And I remember in one of the coaching sessions, you and I talked about, especially for women as little girls, we're preconditioned that this has happened a long time ago. And I've spent a lot of time understanding why I'm the way I am, and my relationship with my mom and my dad, and being the oldest, and things that were going on in the family dynamics, and why I respond the way I do. So now I think it's a nurturing thing for us, and also a high sense of empathy and awareness that if we're feeling it, other women are feeling it too, and wanting to help and wanting to serve at the expense of themselves, for example.
Mm.
And
And
I
do you
think
think
we're
women
all
can do
conditioned.
that? Do you think that
Yeah.
we can? You mentioned, being a people pleaser to our detriment, or maybe it's a good thing. Do you think there's a happy medium?
I do. I do. But I think boundaries have to be set, and knowing when you need to set those boundaries, another great learning tool that we've used, right? That the non-negotiables are these things for me. And that's really what's empowered me now, to most recently make the change, to say, okay, this position, I'm done now. I'm ready for the next position. I would have never been able to do that unless I had gone through this process of understanding, my tendencies, my boundaries, what it means when these things happen, and going, oh, wait a minute. No, that's not okay. Or no, that's not what I want to do. And staying on my path instead of worrying about what everybody else thinks I should do.
Mm. And like, what do you think the biggest shift is for you from, Lisa 4 or 5 years ago, in terms of your people pleasing, your boundaries, your authenticity versus today? Like, what some boundaries maybe you've set, some shifts that you've made that maybe you wouldn't have done before?
Yeah. So, great question. And I got a little like twinge when you asked that question. The biggest shift for me was when I stopped worrying about what other people thought, and I started worrying more about what I thought.
Mm.
I would let others' opinions or others' words or others' agendas always supersede what I thought was best for me. And again, when you experience burnout, you realize you never want to go there again.
Mm. And so, how do you maintain those boundaries now without guilt? Because that's something I hear obviously a lot around wanting to set boundaries, but at the same time, we want to be liked. And, should I speak up or should I just do this? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, well, for me, and this is just me, my faith is a very important part of that. And I have first carved out time every day to start my day to journal, which it's fun to look back to when I first started journaling. And again, wanting to do it perfect, right? I had prompts and I needed to do this and this and this and this, to now just sitting with myself and saying, okay, what am I grateful for today? What brings me joy? What opportunities has God put in place for me? And really, for me, coming to the conclusion that if I try to control things, they never end up well.
I love
If
that.
I sit back and I let them happen and then formulate how I'm going to handle those things, it always works out much better.
Mm.
So this year, much of 2025 was that searching and doing meditation and enjoying nature and giving gratitude for the life that I have. And it's one life, and I don't want to waste any extra minutes on that, because as you and I both know, we've unfortunately had losses in our lives that, tomorrow's not guaranteed. So I don't ever want to wake up and go, I'm not where I need to be, or I'm not doing what I want to do, or I'm not serving the people or God with what I'm doing today. So those boundaries are my boundaries.
Oh, I love that. Like, you are, honestly, guys, if you just had the pleasure to spend some time with Lisa, she's one of the most inspiring women. Honestly, you really are. And I really commend you for all the work that you've done on and for yourself. Most people will never do it and they live a mediocre life. But when you do the hard work and you do work on yourself and you do develop, I remember you saying to me about 360, yes, it's about leadership skills, but it's also about self leadership skills. And because if you can't lead yourself, right, how can you lead others?
Right.
And I'm wondering as well, speaking of leadership, and like you were in industry for 30 years, as you said earlier. I'm sure you've done tons of different leadership courses and like different things where you've experienced things. I'm just curious to understand what has made 360 different to anything you've ever done before.
Yeah. And boy, are there a lot of coaches out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of coaches. And that's great. If people are called to coaching or they've had experiences, I think the more we share, the better. But what 360 has really done is helped me understand me as a woman in a corporate role that is a mom, a wife, a daughter, a friend. And how do I show up in all the different facets of my life and be present and give the best that I can give?
Mm.
So being in the group helped me carve out the time to work on myself. And there are plenty of reflection times and coaching sessions, right? We talk about nutrition. We talk about, I loved Suzanne Sheridan, work-life blend. It's not a balance, it's a blend. And I'll never forget when she did her training on that. The conflict management, the coaching for leaders, the executive presence, that module alone was huge, right? I can invest in myself within the community and within the coaching, but then bring that back to the group and to you and have a coaching session to go, okay, here's what I'm experiencing, or this is the topic that I'm dealing with. Here's what I did. What am I missing? And this is actual, not somebody talking at me as a coach. This is me participating in the group with you, with the other coaches. It truly is a unique experience.
And what would you say is the biggest shifts you've experienced internally and then externally?
So internally, being okay with myself
Mm-hmm.
and being okay with saying things like, I'm not good at math,
Yeah.
right? I know that I need, as an executive in sales, math's important. So I do fine with what I know, but I also realize that I'm not good at it. So I need to go find someone that is. So having confidence to be able to admit it's not a failure or a fault. It's just, I'm just not good at it. So I got to find someone who can help me, right? I'm really good at presentations though. So if someone needs a presentation, someone needs to dissect a market, someone needs to come up with a sales process, I'm the person to call. And I can do that all day. But I didn't realize, because it's so natural to me,
Yes.
that it's not for others who are feeling the way I did about math, that it's okay not to be good at everything, right? So internally telling myself it's okay, you can't be great at everything. And it's a control thing for me. So releasing, giving myself permission to just be okay with who I am internally was the biggest takeaway. And then externally, how I show up. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm invested. I care a lot. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about people. And sometimes I have bad days. Sometimes I'm not so positive. So learning how to externally show up when maybe internally and behind the scenes, I'm probably not feeling it as much. I've been able to, with the tools now, to be present and show up as a human being, and that it's okay. Look, today's just an off day.
And it's okay to have those days.
Yeah, can we talk tomorrow, right? Or, yeah, this is not lining up well with me today. It's not setting well. Could we talk next week? And to be okay with externally showing where I'm at and how I'm feeling so that others don't have to guess.
Oh, I love that. And like even at work, I remember, do you think you showed up differently as a leader in terms of those boardrooms? Like you mentioned at the start that, you know, you were sometimes one woman walking into a room of 14 men. And then I remember you telling me before that you got some like great feedback about your executive presence in terms of how you have shown up differently. So what's different about when you walk into a boardroom now filled with dominant men? What's different for you?
Yeah. So what's different now is I'm aware. So before I would start feeling it, something would be said or there would be something that was not quite right. And now I understand, right? Everything that I look at is through my value lens. And trust and integrity and courage are my top 3 values. So in any meeting, and board meetings are stressful, right? You've got a lot of serious conversations going on. Before, I didn't know how to handle that and how to respond or react or not react. And my inclination is to react. But then I almost like a little eruption, right? And I would say something and it never ended well. So now through the executive presence coaching and my development, when these things happen, I go, oh, wait a minute. That doesn't feel right. Why doesn't it feel right? Okay, that's not entirely true. Okay, I acknowledge it. Now what am I going to do about it? Now I do nothing. I sit.
That's cool. How do you
Yeah.
go from wanting to react and you're just sitting? That's a shift.
Yeah. And then when appropriate to either redirect, and it might be in that meeting or it might be after, to clarify or to provide the data or the information to say, well, I know this was what was discussed, but here's what I see or here's what I think. And show up with it. It's not me personally. And getting defensive is something I've had to really overcome and be able to go, okay, this isn't me. This is the situation. But because I'm so connected to it and take it so personal, I always felt like it was a personal attack and I needed to be defensive. And the reality is I don't. The reality is that I just need to know what I'm doing and be able to speak to it and at the right time. And that timing was the big game changer for me.
But how did you take the personal? Because that's something I hear so much from women is like, how do I stop taking everything so personally? You said there you used to be defensive. Now you're able to kind of sit and you're able to wait for the right moment. You're able to not take it as personally. How did you do that? What's the key?
It's confidence. It's confidence. It's knowing that I should be in that seat and that I can contribute, will contribute, do contribute, and do speak up. And when there's something that's directly, happening that's contrary to what I do believe, it's a matter of how you bring it up and how you present. And we talk about the ego states, right? And I always am mindful of being in the parent ego state. And so it's paying attention to what's happening and then finding the right moment to then speak up, but then speak up.
With the confidence.
With the confidence.
And like, how do you think working together in 360 has helped to shape that confidence? Because that's another huge thing that obviously we focus on is the confidence to speak up, the confidence to set a boundary, the confidence to bite your lip. How did you do that?
Yeah. So I would say, again, I'm doing the work on myself, right? So for anyone who wants to be better or be the best person or best self they can be, you have to put the time in and I put the money in too, right? So I want to get the most out of all of the learning that I could possibly get. So going through like the belief boost method, right? It wasn't until I really understood me and got to know me that I started building that confidence. And I never took 5 minutes to spend any time to understand who I was, how I was, what I was about, what mattered to me. It was always about what everybody else thought I should be doing or should be acting. And should is not in our vocabulary now either.
Amazing. I love that. And how did you, again, like, because everything you're saying is just, my heart is just singing here, because you do the work, you do show up for yourself, you do take the time, but it's a shift. If you've never done that before, if you've never given yourself that time, if you've never invested money in yourself. I know I was exactly the same. I had never done coaching before. I had never invested in myself. Time and money and energy, because as women, we tend to give it all to everybody else. Why do you think more women should do that for themselves, or could do that for themselves?
Well, first of all, in the workplace, there are a lot of us, and a lot of us that are going into leadership positions now. And so having the tools and the confidence, I truly believe that we make great leaders because of all of the dynamics of our personalities, right? And that empathy and the nurturing, being able to make decisions and multitask. We bring a lot of great skill sets to the workplace because we do it at home. And no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you have no kids or little kids or teenagers or older kids, and then older parents, right? There's always a role that we play as women in family dynamics, with friends who are dealing with health issues or relationship issues, in our community, right?
We just give.
We give, right? But being able to say no, being able to pick and choose where we want to put that energy is where we make the biggest difference, instead of being spread so thin that we're not serving anybody.
I think it goes back to what you said earlier about knowing your value, knowing yourself. And when you do that, you can show up authentically. And I always find the more authentic you are, the more confident you are, because it's exhausting trying to pretend to be somebody else.
Yes.
It's exhausting. Lisa, is there anything else you want to share today, just before I ask you our final questions about your journey in 360?
No, it's I can't say enough good things about it. And as I mentioned, Lucy, you're a gift and someone that I'm grateful I did get to meet. And it's probably the biggest single thing in my life that's made the difference. And so now taking all of this and going to the next step, whatever that's going to be, out on my own, doing consulting, getting more involved in the community, I feel very well equipped now to do that.
Amazing. Lisa, you've been an amazing guest. And as you know, there is always a couple of questions that I ask all of our guests, and I cannot wait to hear your answers, because you've been listening to this for a long time. What do success, balance, and happiness mean to you?
So success to me is showing up for yourself every day. Balance is being yourself authentically. And happiness is making sure that you're doing the things that lift you up and lift up the people that you love in your life.
Love that. And what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, or a piece of advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
So one piece of advice, and I share it with everybody who's ever worked for me or with me, is lead from where you are. You don't need a title to show up and to be your best self. And don't wait for someone else to ask you or give you permission. Just rise to the occasion.
Oh, that is such good advice. Such good advice. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so grateful that I have got to know you over the last few years. I consider you a dear friend. I feel like we'll be in touch forever. I think you are an angel on this earth, and I just want nothing but the best for you. I just want you to just spread your light, spread your knowledge. And yeah, I just think you're incredible. If anyone does want to connect with you, is it okay they can connect with you on LinkedIn, or what's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. I spend a lot of time in the LinkedIn community, and so I'm always happy to meet new people. And if anyone wants to have a conversation, please feel free to reach out to me. And if you're considering coaching and definitely want to get some more feedback on the Coaching with Lucy and the 360 Leadership Program, I'm always available for that as well.
Thank you so much, guys. We will link that in the show notes. And if anyone is considering joining 360 or wants to consider coaching with me, you can head over to 360leadersclub.com and you can apply to join our priority waitlist. And when you join that, you will be first in line to secure a spot when we open up spots again really soon this month, actually. So make sure that you are on the list so you are first to hear, and you will also get a preferential rate. So that is it for this week's episode of the show. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I think Lisa has shared a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge, and I hope you've got a lot of information about 362. Until next time, be safe, be well. I'll talk to you then. Bye for now.